Hey everyone, welcome back to Google. Yep, it's Google this time, and of course, you know what that means? That means it's time for another tier list. Now, this is going to be the tier list that I've said before that I'm gonna make before another normal one, which is going to be a try-hard tier list. That means that the way I'll look at the characters is not how good you can use them if you're actually, competent at the game and how successful you can be with those characters. This is purely going to be how successful can you be with this character if you're a tryhard. If you really care about those win rates, those wins, if you're just trying to rank up as much as possible, what is going to be your opinion on these characters? So again, this is going to be the tryhard tier list. So with that being said, thank you so much again for Malorius, of course, for making these lists. And let's get into the tryhard tier list. Alright, so firstly we have Albert. And Albert right now, not really meta. However, as I've said before, if you know what you're doing with Albert, you'll do very well. And that also counts if you are, fighting against tryhards, against high tiers. I'd say Albert is a good backup point guard. Again, he's not really meta. He's not the most chosen. But if you know what you're doing with Albert, you can see a lot of success. Especially since, again, for some reason, a lot of players actually struggle, or to be more exact, a lot of point guards struggle trying to block his smart layup. So it does open him up as a great slasher when paired up with someone like Fire King or Mary. So you can see some success with him even at high tier, just as long as you know what you're doing. So next up, we have our first meta character, Boa. Straight up a meta character. Her defense is really, really good. Like really, really good. Her dive is really, really good. Like really, really good. Her shooting is really good for someone who isn't supposed to be a shooter, which is really, really good. Everything about Boa is just so good, especially her defense, and that's why she is at meta. The amount of dives that you get with her compared to when you use other point guards is pretty insane, and that's why I'd say Becky is definitely meta. A lot of high tier players use her, and for a good reason. She is an amazing point guard because her defense and offense as well is really, really good. She's just an amazing character. That's why she's going at meta. Now, we have Boa. Now, normally I'd say Boa would have been meta, but I have seen a lot less use for Boa ever since, the release of even more powerful point guards. But with that being said, I still would put Boa as a good backup point guard. It's almost meta, honestly. I would almost put Boa at meta, but just because she is being used even less now because of more powerful point guards, I'm just gonna put her at very high good backup. But normally I'd say she is still meta. Her defense is really good. It's just like a weaker version of Becky's defense, which you can see why Becky is meta and Boa is just almost meta. Becky basically replaced Boa altogether because Boa's defense, it was really, really good. Becky's defense is just straight up overpowered, let's be honest. But yeah, that's why Boa is almost meta, but just at the top of good backup for now. It's because Becky pretty much replaced her, since Becky is just the better Boa at this point. Next up, we have Jackie. Now, Jackie used to be a little more popular ever since, shooting was increased. A little less used again right now, but still is used fairly well by a lot. By high tiers, and I'd say is actually still at this can work tier with high tiers. I'd say very high this can work as well, since he is a great scorer. Jackie is definitely still a great scorer. That's why I still would put him at almost good backup. It's just really how this can work because there are still better backups. So next up we have Justin, and believe it or not, it's not at never gonna use it. It's also at this can work. I know a lot of high tier point guards don't really use him as much, but I assure you, if they do use him, he's still going to be viable. His proactive steal is still going to be a great replacement if Neko gets picked or blocked. So I'd say Justin is still at this tier, and I have seen a couple of other high tier point guards use him, and that's for a good reason. He still is actually usable, and he still can be very successful as long as you know what you're doing. So next up we have Lily, and she has some strategies that you can do with her. That's definitely high tier. That can be really effective even in high tier, but you don't really see her use that often. And the strategy that I'm talking about, which is, you know, the little pink spot strategy where you can shoot whatever you want and it's still going to be wide open as long as it's not blocked. It's pretty effective, but once you get to know how to actually stop it, it's not going to be the hardest to stop in the game. And she's not really used that much for that reason as well. So she's not at the never gonna use tier for this tier list. Next up we have May, and I'm telling you, that change to give May a no miss pass change, that just upgraded her so much so that I'm putting her at good backup. Now technically I don't actually see a lot of high tiers use May, but I'm telling you, if they were to use May, they're still gonna get a lot of success. Because while we're at it, we'll also put Mo-chan, since both of them have no miss pass. It's a really good skill to have, since it just pretty much prevents bad passes from any character. So yeah, there's a good reason why they are here at good backup. It's because they're just really great point guards, especially with that no bad pass skill. And that's why I'd say they're both at good backup, and not just this can work. They are legitimately great point guards, and high tiers can take advantage of that, and they can kill a lot of point guards if they use this properly, and you know, team them up with proper scorers. They can be very far, and they can receive passes from very far away without losing the ball. It's just too good to pass up. Good backup for both Mo-chan and May. Next up, we have Nana, and you know, there's a good reason it's still meta. It's because she's still really good. She still is really good, and she's still very effective. You know, pair her up with a Randy, Silverwolf, Alto. Pair her up with even, let's say, Marcus, David. It all works. Nana's way too versatile to not be meta, and she's still being used because she is still very effective. Nana, definitely still meta. Next up, we have Neko, and just like before, it's also meta. Neko isn't as used as much as other point guards by high tiers, but those who actually use her in high tier can be very dangerous. Very dangerous. There are some players out there, some high tier point guards, where the second you give a bad pass, once they use Neko, they are stealing that ball, and you can't do anything about it. Neko, very powerful in the right hands, and that's why she is still meta. If the correct player uses Neko, she's gonna do a lot of damage. That's why Neko is in the meta list, or in the meta tier, in my tier list for, you know, try-hard characters. Next up, we have Takumi. He is going straight to never gonna use tier. Again, I'm telling you, if they replace Inspire with Jump Stop Shot, I'm telling you, Takumi is straight up going to be a good backup point guard, because he is going to be such a good shooter. But because his only ability is just break your ankles and boost your team's accuracy by a little bit, it's still not enough. it is still not enough to be a great player, to be a great character. So it's not even going to be in the this can work tier, a good backup or meta. It's just they're never going to use Takumi. High tiers, I mean. High tier players are never going to use Takumi, and for a good reason. He just is mid. But hey, maybe they'll replace Inspire with Jump Stop Shot in the future. Who knows? If they do, I'm telling you, Takumi getting a very big boost. Next up, we have White. And just like Takumi, he's going to be never going to use, but at the very top, because I do feel like if high tiers use him, they can still get some success with him. But yeah, let's be honest, compared to other point guards, it's still not going to be as much. If they just raise his intercept, which would be fair in my opinion, I think White would actually have a chance of being a great point guard compared to the other point guards. So we're going to put White at never going to use, but if they do increase his intercept by a good, let's say, 15% to 25%, which might sound like a lot, trust me, it's not. It's not a lot at all. Minus a max steal White, I still can't get 1 steal per game consistently. A 15% to 25% increase in intercept would be really good for White, but it's not going to make him broken at all, trust me. But yeah, for now, as it stands, White is in the never gonna use tier. Next up, we have Yasmin, and she's going straight to please nerf. She's 100% meta, and yes, it's not 20% accuracy, flat boost, and not a 20% disturbance resistance flat boost, but it's still a 10% accuracy flat boost and a 10% disturbance resistant flat boost. That is still so overpowered. That is way too overpowered still. They need to nerf Yasmin. They just have to nerf Yasmin. It's not fair still. And it's not just the boost either, it's her shot too. You know, I used a Yui, and she kept shooting minor contested trees on my face. I thought they removed that. No, she still does. Against Yui, she kept shooting just minor contested trees on my face and everything went in, while I actually covered her properly. So no, both her boost and her shot still needs a lot of nerf. It's still stupid. Nerf Yasmin. Just nerf her. So yeah, she's going to the please nerf tier in this one. And finally we have Yui, and I'm not gonna lie, I really do think she's at the verge of meta because of her rolling scene skill change. But for now, she's gonna be at the very top of good backup. She is almost there. Almost there. Maybe in the future this list might change. For now, she is at the verge of meta. Almost meta. Yui is about to get to meta. But with Becky still being the most overpowered at the moment when it comes to defense and dives as a point guard, Yui just will be at the top, at the very top of good backup. But she's almost there. She is almost at meta. So with that, let's go on and move with the shooting guards. Alright, so the first shooting guard that we're going to be ranking is Ayumi, and Ayumi is going straight into never gonna use tier. Now, technically, I have seen a lot of legend players and a lot of master players use Ayumi on ladder for some reason, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, those legend players and master players that I see use Ayumi, most of the time, do you know who they just pair up Ayumi with? Most of the time, they're gonna use two bigs. They're gonna do Andrew and Emma, and then they're just gonna do another shooting guard or a small forward. And with Ayumi, they might just pair her up with a Jessica, another shooting guard, or a David, which is not a good idea. So, I'm not, saying, I don't mean to be mean, but I do believe that those legend and master players just aren't really at the correct level, so to speak. I think they're not really at legend and master player levels in terms of, let's say, the Southeast Asia server. I don't think they actually are that level yet. Your competition just isn't. It's just not as good, because there's no way an Ayumi and a David plus I think it was actually Big Joanne at Legend is going to fight off a proper team, a proper overpowered team, which I did see who they match up with. They match up with just the same weird matchups. It's not proper teams that they're matching up with. And yeah, that's why even if I do see some Master and Legends use Ayumi, if you do actually fight up against Legend and Master level players who legitimately belong in the Legend and Master level, ranking, Yui, or Ayumi I should say, is still going to be the never going to use tier. So next up we have Black Crow, and for some reason a lot of players still struggle trying to defend Black Crow. And I can't understand it for the life of me why they would still struggle. All you had to do was trace him, go to his side, and you're just gonna let him shoot contested, and if he fakes, well, you stay at the side, and when he's about to shoot, you go in front of him and block him. It's not really that hard. I don't know why a lot of people struggle with Black Crow, because honestly, I'd put him probably near the bottom of Disc and Work if, I was the one going up against him. But with just how many players actually still do get destroyed by Black Crow really well, I can't believe I'm gonna put him at a good level at good backup, probably around the middle. He's still very much usable against other Legends and Masters, because for some reason they still struggle against him. But yeah, again, I'm not trying to be mean. It is what it is. So with the results that I've seen, I'd put Black Crow at the middle of good backup, because it is still actually successful against high tiers. Next up, Sure, another one that for some reason a lot of people struggle with, when it's really not that hard to actually defend Sure. But Sure, so maybe if some are just really better at using her than others, but for me personally, if I was them, I'd put her at the bottom of Disc and Work as well. But since it is still pretty successful against other players, I'd put it at the top of Disc and Work. Black Crow is still more effective than Sure, but Sure is still actually pretty effective in high tier if you know what you're doing. So that's why she's going to be at the top of Disc and Work for now. Now, next up we have Conan, and even if he's not being used as much anymore, if Edward, replaced him when it comes to dunk spam with high tiers, Conan is still going to be meta. He still has that toss dunk, and combined with Robbie, it's still very hard to block him. Even combined with Vanessa, if you know what you're doing, it's still very hard to block him. But mid-range build Conans right now are doing crazy things. They never miss, man. Mid-range build Conans have been very crazy this season, and his defense is still elite. So yeah, in my opinion, Conan is still meta. He's still one of the best teammates that you can get if you know what you're doing, and that's why he's at the meta tier in this tier list. Next up we have David, and if I use Ranger against him, it'd be at never gonna use, again personally. If I am using a shooting guard against him, he's going to be at This Can Work, because I will struggle a little bit still. But with other high tiers, with how cheesy their defense have been, he's still actually not going to be that effective against other high tiers, but can be effective enough that I still would actually put him at lower parts of This Can Work. David can still work. I see some Legends still use him and see success with him. So, who am I to put him down too much? So we'll just put him at the lower end of This Can Work, because he's still not that used too much in high tiers for a good reason. With the very cheesy defenders right now, it's not really that hard to block David that much. So he's going to be at the bottom part of This Can Work. Next up, Fire King. And with just how stupid contested trees have been, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Fire King is going to be at very high good backup. It's not quite meta, because again, with a good defender, you can still shot down a Fire King really well, but it still works really well in high tiers, because a lot still jump when Fire King fakes, and even if they don't jump and contest him, a lot still goes in because of how stupid the contested 3-point, scene is at SBA right now. So, Fire King, I can't believe it, would be at good backup. Fire King is actually going to be at good backup. That's pretty insane. But yeah, because of how some high tiers, master and legend level players, mind you, still jump against his fakes, and just how stupid it is, but it still works, that his contested trees are going to keep going in, Fire King's going to be at good backup tier. Now, we have Friedman, and he's going to be at never going to use tier as well. Hold on, let's adjust this a little bit. There you go. Friedman, some masters do use him and see success with him, and that's against the more, experienced players as well, but that's because they don't really see a lot of Friedman users. But if you know what you're doing with Friedman, it's not really the hardest to shut him down in the first place. So, and also legend players, they don't really use Friedman as well, and that's for a good reason. There's just way better options, and that's why Friedman is going to be the never going to use tier. Next up, we have Hoy, and he's also going to be in the never going to use tier. There's only one time that I've seen someone use Hoy and actually have a pretty effective strat, and that's the random quick shot strat that I've seen. Like, he just randomly shoots or uses quick shots while another player does offense as well. I think it was Mo-chan and Hoy. They were both just using quick shots and flash shots, and it actually was pretty effective, especially if you're not used to reacting quickly. But other than that, Hoy is still a terrible shooting guard, so no. He's still going to be a never gonna use, especially for high tiers. They're never gonna use Hoy. It's unbelievable if they would. Next up, we have Jessica. Again, a character that if I was defending, I'd put on just the bottom of this gonna work. But a lot of legends and masters user, and for some reason a lot actually get good just I can't believe it, but they do actually get good results. So, the amount of good results I see, it's enough to warrant her and put her at actually good backup tier. It is, and it's pretty crazy. It is enough to put her at good backup tier, even though, like I said, if I personally defended her, it's only going to be if this can work, since it's not the hardest to shut her down. But for some reason it just works on legends and masters. I don't know how they make it work, but the defense against her just doesn't exist, I guess. But yeah, with just how effective Jessica actually is against high tiers, for some reason I had to put her at very low good backup, because again, a good high tier player still going to shut down a Jessica if they know what they're doing, so it shouldn't really be that high either. So next up, we have Maggie. Again, another never gonna use character. Maggie just doesn't have the correct skills to dominate high tiers, and her inconsistency in shooting is it plagues her, just makes it really hard to actually use Maggie effectively. That's why she's going to be at the never going to use tier. High tiers are never going to use Maggie because there are way better options than her. So yeah, she's going to be at the very low parts of never going to use. Next up, we have Marcus. Now, Marcus at Southeast Asia, I'd say, is at bottom meta. Like, he gets used quite a bit at high tier, but he doesn't actually win, the most wins. But a good Marcus would still make you pay at Southeast Asia servers at least. But in US, I don't see him as much in high tiers. But again, if you're good at defending Marcus, you'd still do really well against him. So I'm kind of torn if it's just really good backup or just very low meta. But for now, I'm going to put Marcus at the very bottom of meta. If you know how to shut him down, you can do very well at shutting him down. But with just how stupid contested trees have been, and his ignoring rate of 25% seemingly being boosted by an invisible 10%, let's put Marcus at at meta, at the very bottom of meta, because he still is very effective. So, next up we have Mary, and Mary is going straight to the bottom of this can work. A lot of high tiers are not gonna use her, but a lot of diamonds do use her, and she can be quite effective here and there if you really have a good strategy. If you don't actually have a strategy, it's just pass back strategy, it's not really going to be as effective, especially against high tiers. And so that's not really going to be popular with high tiers if it's not going to be that effective. So that's why Mary is at this can work at the very bottom, because some might still use it, but a majority would not. A majority will not use Mary since it's not going to be the most effective. Again, especially with high tiers. So next up, we have Misaki. Misaki is going straight into meta. It's going to be high meta too. See, Misaki has been nerfed a little bit, but it's not enough of a nerf. It really isn't. If you delay your shot enough, you can dribble out Misaki's dribble move into the very end, and if you don't follow her, it's still going to be wide open. It's not enough of a nerf. It still really isn't. ISOing this, if the Misaki knows how to cheese properly, you're still not going to be able to ISO her that effectively. They do have to nerf it a little bit, but it still isn't the most overpowered in the game. Misaki still isn't the most overpowered, so I'd say Misaki is just at meta. At high meta, not quite at fleece nerf. High tiers love using her, for a good reason. So, next up on our list is Silverwolf, and I can't believe I'm gonna do this, but Silverwolf is actually just going to be at the low point of meta. He really is. I can't believe it, but there's a lot more overpowered characters than Silverwolf. There really are. Especially once you figure out how to actually defend him properly, or if you, just match up against Elise, maybe Malik, maybe Robbie, maybe Ranger, maybe Alto, maybe Nikolai, who knows. If you run up against those guys that can solo shut him down, or if you have correct teammates that know what they're doing, shutting Silverwolf is actually not the hardest thing to do in the world. Still, if you don't have those characters, and if your teammates don't know how to, help you out on defense, Silverwolf is still going to be very, very hard to stop. That's why he's still going to be at meta. Granted, at the lower part of meta. So, next up, we have Susan. Never gonna use. Okay, so next up, we have Taylor. Now, Taylor. She's still bugged. She is still bugged. She still is bugged. She still has that invisible sight move, which makes her incredibly deadly because you have to be face to face with her to actually contest her. She still has a crazy contested tree making ability, and just like Marcus, her 25% ignorance rate seems to be increased by 10% or something, 35 plus more bonuses, because she just seems to keep shooting wide opens when she shouldn't really be. And with that being said, we're gonna put her on high meta. Because guess what? She is still broken, she is still bugged, and she is still very much effective. And that's really all there is to it. So that's why high tiers are gonna want to use Taylor, because she is still bugged and she still hasn't been fixed. So, with those being said, let's go ahead and get into the small forwards. So, at the small forward list, first up we have Bin. Cute little changes to buff him. Doesn't really help out. Never gonna use. Next up we have Butterball, and for some reason he just doesn't get used that much at high tier. But if you know what you're doing with him, you can be really effective. Now, usually I still would have put him on good backup at decent amounts, but with just how overpowered defenders have been, even Butterball screens are not going to be that, that much more helpful. It's just not going to be enough. That's why, as sad as I am to admit it, I'm just going to put it at this can work tier. His, entire shtick is that his screen is really good. He's got a really wide screen, but that doesn't really matter that much if the defenders you're releasing are just broken, especially against shooters, when really it should be dunks that are being weakened, not shooters. Shooters, all you have to do is just lower the amount of contested trees and make 2-pointers a little less accurate again, and everything would be fine. But no, they keep targeting shooters, so Butterball isn't as effective anymore as he was before. So yeah, a good high tier player would still be able to make it work, but it's just not going to be as effective as it is before. So I'm putting Butterball at this can work. I don't see a lot of players, high tiers or even low tier players, using Butterball, but I believe that if a high tier player is using him and he knows how to use him properly, he can still do a lot of damage, especially with those screens. It's just not going to be as effective as others. So, next up on our list is Dora, and man, did she have a rise in power. She's going straight up in high, good backup tier. She's not quite meta, but in all honesty, if the Dora user knows how to use her properly, she can go up against meta. The boost she got from, her skill change, really good, and I'd say really well deserved. Dora was just terrible before, but with this change, Dora has been really, really good. And that's good. Dora deserved this buff, and I'm happy that, I'm happy to say that a lot of characters Dora can beat now. And a lot of high tier players would use Dora, and they have. And they're pretty successful with her. Next up is Greta, and I'm gonna put Greta at the low end of this can work. I know some legend level players and masters use her, and they get a lot of success, but in all honesty, I have the same feeling with those who actually, use a Yumi that get success with it. I don't think they're just at the correct level that they're playing at. Their enemies are not as good as defending. Greta just isn't really that hard to stop if you know what you're doing. So I'm still gonna put Greta at just the lower part of this can work, because if a high tier player is using him and he goes up against a good defender, high tier player, chances are he is gonna get shut down, because again, Greta isn't really the hardest to stop. And so I'll just put her at the lower part of this can work. Next up, we have Havoc. And again, I'm just gonna put Havoc at the lower part of this can work. A little more effective than Greta, I'd say. His skill set is revolved around, being able to do a bunch of different things. And that's pretty helpful, but again, against a good high tier player, Havoc isn't exactly the deadliest player, so he's just gonna be at the lower to mid part of this can work tier. Next up, we have Julian, and with just how buffed mid-ranges have been, I'd say Julian is actually at good backup tier right now. Not the highest, but still at good backup tier. Julian's skills are just really good right now, especially after the mid-range buff. Now they're buffing, mid-range fadeaways even more. Julian is actually pretty tricky to block as a shooting guard too, which adds even more to his power at the moment. And I can't believe it, but I'm happy for him, but he is going at good backup because after the buff, Julian has been really, really effective. And high tier players have been using him a little bit more than before. So yeah, Julian's going to be at the lower part of good backup because he's still a solid character. Next up, I can't believe it, but Camille, even until now, still at meta. Camille is still meta. If you know what you're doing with Camille, it's still going to be really hard to actually defend him properly. Obviously, dunk spam is still going to be more effective. It's still going to be scarier than Camille, but Camille still very much just an effective character. He's ruled meta for so long, and until now he still is ruling meta. If you know what you're doing with Camille, you're still going to get a lot of success. So Camille is going to mid to low meta. So next up we have Martin, and he's just like a little worse version of Camille. I'm tempted to put him at this can work, but with the amount of players not actually using him, I'm gonna put him at just the very top of never gonna use at almost this can work. He can almost work, but not a lot of players are using him for a good reason. Not a lot of high tier players are using him. It's because there are a lot of better options, and Martin just is a little bit more inconsistent than other characters. That's why he's gonna be at the very top of never gonna use, but he is almost at this gonna work levels. So next up, we have Natalie. Natalie used to be at meta, but with just how overpowered shooters have been, I'm not gonna lie, Natalie's probably going to be at the never gonna use below Martin. So many players can block her easily now, and it's just not fair. It's just not fair how overpowered blockers and defenders have been. They gotta start nerfing them, seriously. But yeah, Natalie gonna be almost the same level as Martin at never gonna use. Can be at this can work, but has just been nerfed so badly with how overpowered the defenders have been. So much so that I'm just gonna put her at never gonna use. And yeah, call it a day. So next up we have Nico. I'm kind of happy to see him. He's not overpowered at all, but even then, he's also not useless. So I'm gonna put Nico at about middle of this can work. It's not the hardest to stop, but if you know what you're doing with Nico, you can still be very effective. Very effective. If you just know what you're doing, but a lot of high tier players are not gonna be using Nico that much. Because, there are better options out there, more overpowered, more cheesy. So yeah, it's gonna be at this can work, but let's be honest, not a lot of players are still gonna use it. Next up we have Kiang, and if you know what you're doing with Kiang, and some high tiers do, that's why I have seen them use him, I'm gonna have to put him at the very top of this can work, at almost good backup as well. So it's the same story as Butterball, and it's almost at good backup, but just not quite yet. But if you know what you're doing with Kiang, you can be very effective. You can be getting success with him, just if you actually do know what you're doing. It's not quite a good backup yet, because there are, again, other options for high tier players, more broken, cheesy options. But yeah, Kiang is going to be at the this can work if the high tier player really knows what they're doing. Next up is Randy, and Randy still actually is at meta, and I'd say just a little bit more of a meta than Camille and Silverwolf, but they're almost the same level. He's still very effective if you know what you're doing, and that's why a lot of high tier players still use Randy. It's because he still is pretty cheesy. especially with his high jump. I've seen a lot of Zachary-like playstyle where you dunk through a screener, but he's also more reliable in terms of, needing to shoot trees and just the different types of styles of his scoring that he can use. He's just a little bit more versatile than other dunkers. That's why a lot of players still use him. A lot of high tier players still actually use Randy, and I'd say he's still at the middle of meta. He's still actually pretty meta right now, and he's still pretty overpowered if you know what you're doing with him. So next up, speaking of overpowered, we have Rika, and I normally put him at meta, but right now they just still are not listening. They are still not nerfing Rika properly. Shooting guards are still getting destroyed by Rika for a good reason. It's because it's so hard to escape her defense, and it's so hard to actually block her offense. The defense part is fine. Having someone shut down SGs properly, that's 100% fine. But the fact that it's so hard to stop her shot, you gotta nerf it. Please nerf her shot. Nerf her shooting, or the needed height and timing for her shots, so that it's not too hard. Her pull-up is still way too hard. Amanda's pull-up needed to be hard to block, and that was fair because that is Amanda's shtick. She is an offensive player. But Rika is the better offensive player and better defensive player. It's just not fair. So please. Usually I put Rika at meta, but right now, you just have to nerf her shot. It is just way too hard to try and block Rika's shot if you're a shooting guard or a point guard. It's almost darn near impossible, so please, you need to nerf Rika's shot. Please nerf Rika's shot, and that's gonna be her placement on this tier list. Please nerf Rika's shot. It's still way too overpowered. Lastly, for the small forwards, we have Zilong, and I think it's the same story as Kiang as well. I'd say a little below Kiang. Zilong can be very good if the player knows how to use him properly, and they still can make it work. I have seen a couple of master level players use Zilong. I haven't seen legend players use him yet, but a couple of master level players have used him, and they have seen some success with him since they know how to use him properly. And the way to use him properly is to just really change up your style, keep shooting different shots, pull-ups, or should I say finger roll, dribbling a bit, going for those dunks, double pumps. It all really works if you know how to change it up. And that's why I put Zilong here on almost good backup, but just slightly below Kiang in this gonna work tier. A high tier player would still be able to make it work, but there are still better options than Zilong. Alright, so next up, we have the power forwards. So, first one that we have here is Alto, straight up into meta. Oh, sorry about that. Straight up into meta, Alto is just way too overpowered. His dunk is just so hard to stop if you're going solo, because if he does a close dunk, close lightning dunk, you literally have to jump 0.1 second into it. You have to jump instantly to actually block it, which is just unfair. You gotta help us solo these. It's way too overpowered, and his defense on shots too, really good. His defense on dunks, really good. Alto is just way too good overall to not be at meta. And again, as long as they nerf that close dunk, lightning dunk, which for some reason I think they're actually giving to Elise right now. I've seen myself going through Elise. It's pretty annoying, but yeah, Alto, his close dunk, lightning dunk, and if Elise is gonna get one, please just nerf those. But for now, he's not quite in the please nerf category. It's just going to be at meta. Alto at about high to middle meta, really overpowered right now. So next up on the list is Amanda. And as much as I'd like to say this can work, it really cannot work that well. As others, maybe if a really, really good player can do it, can make it work maybe, but with how, again, overpowered defenders have been, and just how underpowered Amanda still is at shooting, she's just gonna have to sit and never gonna use. Lots of fighters are never gonna use Amanda, and that's because, you know, she just isn't that good compared to other characters. There are way better options, way better scores than Amanda, and that's why I'm gonna have to put her at slightly high at never gonna use at this tier. And yeah, high tiers, not really gonna use her that much. Next up we have Edward, of course, meta as well. If you pair it up with a Robbie, almost impossible to stop solo. The only way you're gonna stop Edward is if you have two bigs, or one big and one character with a tough guy, and both of you guys know how to stop him properly, which is going to the side of him. And for his quick dunks, you know, one of you have to stay at the middle and wait for it. If he doesn't activate it, you go to the side immediately to try and stop his toss dunk. So if you don't know, if you don't have that, if you don't have a teammate who knows how to stop it and you have to solo it, you're dead. Especially if you're against Robbie. So yeah, Edward is meta. Not much to explain. Next up is Elise, and she's the character that I want to be nerfed the most. Her defense is way too punishing still. It's way too punishing, way too overpowered. They need to nerf her dash. A dash timer or a cooldown that's not at least 15 seconds long is way too short. 15-second cooldown for a dash, I'd say is fair. Maybe even longer should be added. Anything less than 15 seconds is way too overpowered still. That's just not enough of a nerf. It has to be 15 seconds plus. Elise's defense is way too punishing. She can block from so far. She can block so good with dunks. She has the ability to dash so she can recover in, rebounding as well. Her defense is way too punishing. You have to nerf Elise. She is way too overpowered. And again, I feel like she's getting the auto buff of close dunk, lightning dunk, where if you don't jump immediately, you're not getting that block. You're just gonna go through him. Well, it looks like that's happening to Elise too, so hopefully that doesn't happen. You have to nerf Elise. You have to. She's just way too punishing. You have to nerf Elise. So she's going at the very top of please nerf. Next up, we have Katyusha. And as much, again, as the others, like, I'd say this can work, really? Not really. Again, with how overpowered defenders have been, Katyusha's just not gonna work. I've seen some masters use her and get some wins. Trust me, against good defenders, good high tier defenders, that's not gonna happen. Katyusha's getting shut down. Unless they just make her shots a little more consistent, I don't really see Katyusha being able to go up against these OP defenders. Really, it all revolves around these guys that can just do good offense while also being so OP at defense. No. That's just no. I don't feel it, you know? So, yeah, Katyusha's going to be at the pretty high never gonna use tier. And that's where she's gonna stay most likely for the rest of this game's lifespan, with just how things are going. Sad, I know, but it is what it is. Next up, we have Lightning. Now, usually, I'd put him in about D tier, C tier, Lightning. If you know what you're doing with him, maybe you can see some success, but not that much. But that's if you actually play him properly and fairly. Lightning is actually still cheesy right now, and he's going straight up to meta. at about high to mid meta. Just because of his ability, hold on, actually, there you go. Just because of his ability that is similar to Altos. His close dunk. Lightning's close dunk is still buggy. If you use a close dunk with Lightning, unless you jump immediately, you are going through Lightning. You're just gonna go through him. And you see the problem there? You can switch it up with a double pump dunk, and because you need to jump too early, that double pump dunk is going to go in no matter what. If you are trying to block the double pump dunk, you can just, simply make a close dunk and you're gonna go through him. It's just not fair. It's not fair for solo bigs, and unless you have, again, a second big or another character with tough guy that can actually, catch that double pump so you can keep jumping instantly to block his close dunk, it's not likely you're gonna get a lot of blocks from Lightning. So I'm gonna have to put him at high to mid tier when it comes to meta. Lightning is just really, really good when it comes to cheesing, and the high tiers will keep abusing them. Next up, we have Lucy, again, a character that goes straight into meta. This one is way more fair. Way more fair. It is a lot easier to block since you have a lot more time, but it still is dunk spam, and it still is cheesy, and it still is loved by a lot of high tiers because of, just those said things. It's cheesy, it's dunk spam. High tiers love this stuff, and that's why they love Lucy. Lucy 100% works still on meta, and she's going to be at middle of meta. Lucy is still a high tier meta character, and that's why she's at meta at my tier list. Now, next up, we have Nikolai. And Nikolai, I'm going to put for a high tier who knows what they're doing at good backup. Nikolai isn't quite meta, but if you're defending a shooter, you're using speed Nikolai and you know what you're doing, you're still going to be able to actually do very well. And I have seen some legend and master player characters use this, and they have seen success. And that's for a good reason. Nikolai is still really good if you know how to use him properly. So I'm going to put Nikolai at good backup at the very, very high good backup. Next up, we have Pinky, and usually I'd have put her at meta, but as if you've seen my post lately, you're gonna know they actually fixed it properly. They finally fixed her, and that just drops her down to about good backup. That just drops her to good backup. Because they finally fixed Pinky. And when they fixed her smart dunk, so now she only does post boards when she needs to do post boards. You don't have to guess anymore. It is way easier to defend Pinky now. Way easier. That's why she loses her spot on meta and just on good backup. So that should still tell you she's still pretty cheesy, but it's a lot better than before. So she's going to be at good backup. High tiers who know how to use her properly are still going to be very effective, just not as effective as other dunk spammers. So in my Tryhard tier list, we're going to be putting her at high good backup. Next up, we have Ranger. And anything other than block build Ranger, I'd say is never going to use, but with block build Ranger, I'm not going to lie, I've seen some others use max block builds as well. They've seen some good stuff. They've seen good results. And I'm gonna have to put Max Block Ranger for a high tier player at good backup. You can still use him really well, and you're gonna get good results as long as you know what you're doing. But there are other, more OP defenders. But if you're free to play and you're a pure character, you are a pure player, you don't like pay to win, you don't like cheese like me, Max Block Ranger is a really, really good character to use because not only is he effective, he's really fun, and even for high tiers, he can do really well. He can go up against meta as long as he knows what he's doing. So next up we have Rena. Rena is 100% meta. His blocking skill is really good against shooters. It's really, really hard to escape Rena if he knows what he's doing because of his blocking ability. And offensively, he's really, really hard to stop, especially if he's paired up against Robbie. Even then, if it's not Robbie, other big men, if you pair him up with Rena can just still dunk freely, especially if, the defenders don't know what you're doing. Rena is 100% meta. He is just 100% meta. He is, honestly, it's almost the please nerf category. It's just that if you do know what you're doing, you can still get some success at stopping him. But honestly, it's really bordering to just please nerf already. But for now, we're gonna put Rena at meta. We're just gonna have to put Rena at meta for now, at very high meta. So let's hope he gets proper fixes in the future that would make him just a little bit more fair fight. Now we have Rocket. Rocket has been such a headache of a case. He used to be a meta, and then he turned pretty bad, and he just kept going downhill from there. But right now, Rocket, if you know what you're doing, is still a good backup. He's still going to be a good backup, but he is not meta at all. Rocket is not meta anymore. A lot of legends and, master level players still use Rocket. And that's because of his new blocking skill, which in my opinion shouldn't have been given to Rocket. I still think he should have retained rebound pass, and his kit should have been changed back to being pure rebound, but it is what it is. But yeah, Rocket right now being used by some legend and master level players and seeing a lot of success with. I still believe he's gonna get destroyed if he gets if he faces up against other OP defenders. I still do believe that. So right now I'm still gonna put Rocket at just good backup. He's not quite meta. If you're not at the top of the top, even as a high tier, you're not gonna want to actually get him if you can get other bigs that are better. So Rocket's going to be placed at just a very high good backup. So next up we have Uncle Kevin, straight into never gonna use tier. Next up we have Zachary. Zachary is of course meta, as you know. A little more flexible than Edward because you're not stuck to just using, lightning dunks and toss dunks, but that's more effective if the defenders don't know what they're doing than with Zachary. But Zachary is just way more flexible. He can change it up mid-game if he sees that, you're reading him properly. He can just start mixing it up. And combined with Robbie or other bigs who know what they're doing, it's going to be almost impossible to still stop this solo. Both of you need to know how to stop Zachary properly if you want any chance of actually stopping him. It's not just one of you. It's not just, it has to be two bigs. A shooter as well can help as long as they have tough guy, they know what they're doing. But if you don't, they're not going to have a lot of success with stopping Zachary. So yeah, Zachary is still going to be at high meta. Zachary still is meta. It's going to be still high meta because it's just effective dunk spam. And that's why he's there in my meta tier list. And finally, we have the centers. So, the first center that we're going to be talking about is Allen. And Allen, I'd say, would be at the top of this can work. Now, I'm actually torn between good backup, and this can work. But in my opinion, he's used enough to see that, legends and masters do use him. But then their win rate, their success rate with him is not actually as good as other characters that they try. So I'm still gonna put Alan at this can work at the very top, almost good backup. He's really, really close to it. It's like I'd say the equivalent of Fire King, of being really close, like Yui, very, very close to meta, but not quite getting it. Alan is really close to good backup, just a little bit more of a push and he'll be there. And yeah, high tiers have been using him quite a bit, but their success rate with him has just not been as well as other cheesier characters. So with that, I put Albert at the top of this can work for now. Next up, we have Amy, and she's going to be at the never gonna use tier. I'd say she can still be very effective, but other high tiers are just never gonna use her because, she's not cheesy, while other bigs are. So Amy, she's going to be at high never gonna use, because she is never gonna be used, let's be honest. She's not cheesy enough for other high tiers to use her, and she's just outclassed by a lot of bigs. She needs some buff. Next up, we have Andrew. And Andrew, I'd say, is actually at the lower end of meta. He's actually a really, really good big. He's a really, really good defender. I think a lot of people underestimate Andrew. I'd say he's actually a really, really decent big. He's a really good meta big. And I'd put Andrew at the lower part of meta. He's really, really good at defense. If you know how to use him properly, you can be very effective with him. His rebounding is decent enough that he can fight off other defenders or other rebounders. In fact, he can out-rev Rocket, which is stupid to me, but blah blah blah, whatever. Andrew, I'd say, is low meta. Next up is Big Mike. He's terrible right now. He's never gonna be used. So he's going straight to never gonna use tier. Next up, we have Big O. And as good of a change it is that Big O gets, if you remember my tier list, he got a very low SS, and I still believe that if you want to use him properly, you can do really well. But again, this is the Tryhard tier list, so Big O is going straight into never gonna use tier. No high tiers are gonna use Big O because others are just way more effective than Big O. Next up, we have Big Joanne, and at Diamond, it's actually pretty surprising how many use her that much. But there's a reason why at Master and Legend levels, no one really uses her that much. It's because her defense is decent and her rebounding is decent, but they're not cheesy. So yeah. With that being said, just like the others, Big Joanne is getting never gonna use tier. Next up, we have Daisuke, and finally, we break the never gonna use train, and we're gonna go back to meta. And I'd say Daisuke is just about middle to low meta. Daisuke is really, really effective at blocking dunks. In fact, one of the best in the entire game. And that's why he's here. He's one of the most effective stoppers for characters like Lightning, for characters like Reno, those guys who loves dunking directly at the ball. He can do really well. Daisuke can shut them down really, really well. And that's why Daisuke is at mid to low meta in my Tryhard tier list. Next up, we have Emily, and though not as used as she was before after her nerf, she still is used quite a bit, and that's why she's still going to meta. Lots of high tiers still use her, and for a good reason. Her defense is still overpowered. It's not the most overpowered, but it still is Very powerful against shooters, against dunkers. She can be really effective if you know what you're doing with her. And a lot of 5 tiers love to use her because of her versatile defense. So yeah. Emily, straight into meta, about mid to low meta as well. Next up we have Emma. And she's not that used at Legends or Masters. But I assure you, if they have a good shooter, Emma is going to mid, maybe slightly high to mid meta. Emma is just really good at supporting her teammates, especially if they are shooters. So yeah, I put Emma here because I've seen some success with her. I have been actually using her, and I've seen some success when I help out my shooter teammates. So yeah, Emma, in my opinion, is going to mid to high meta in my Tryhard tier list. Next up is Howie, trash. Next up we have Malik. Malik, you know, it's not the most overpowered in the world, but just how long his block can reach, it's way too long. His block reach is way too long. The fact that he has a better block reach and block timing than Ranger? That's just disrespectful. That is criminal. So please, nerf his block. It's insane how long he can reach. Just please, nerf Malik's block range. And in all honesty, he's just going to be good meta. Once his block reach is actually fixed, I'd say he's almost darn near fair, honestly. It's just that his block reach and block timing is so overpowered. So you have to fix his block range, just how far he can reach when he blocks, and how late he can block. He can block way too late, and it's way too punishing against shooters. So yeah, I'd say please nerf Malik. To be more exact, please nerf Malik's block range and block timing. Next up, we have Robbie. And Robbie is going straight into please nerf territory as well. To be more exact, I want them to nerf his screen size. His screen size and its design is just way too hard to deal with, especially with toss dunk. It's just not fun. Please nerf Robbie. He's still dominating so much because of how overpowered he is. So please nerf Robbie. Next up we have Sarah, and I'm gonna put her at around the high to mid tier of this gonna work. It's just, I wouldn't say she's bad, but there are so many overpowered bigs right now that can block her decently, and her power is so low. Her rebounding too isn't really that good compared to other, OP defenders. So why choose her? Why would you choose her when you can defend better and rebound better with other characters? So yeah, I'm just gonna put her in the middle of this can work. Maybe high to mid of this can work. Tryhards still do sometimes use her, but it's just not gonna be that effective. Compared to if you use Malik or someone like that. Next up we have Vanessa, and up to now, I'd say Vanessa is still a meta character. Her rebounding is still the best in the entire game. It still is. Vanessa's still the best rebounder in the game. If you know what you're doing, it's gonna be hard to actually, out-rev Vanessa if they know what they're doing. So I'm gonna put her at slightly low to mid meta. Vanessa is just still a really good rebounder, just being a little bit outclassed right now by just the amount of OP defenders currently in the game. Lastly, we have Victor. Sadly, just like with others, you're never going to use Victor. High tier players are never going to use Victor. So yeah, that is it for the Tryhard tier list. And just how effective these characters will be if cheesers get their hands on them. This is my Tryhard tier list. I hope that this has been somehow helpful. You learned anything? I hope that it's been somehow entertaining. I'll catch you guys on the next one.